Take 10, 20 directions to.
Okay. I think at 9:30, I'll start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 2025 Jung's AI and AWS Youth Day group discussion. Today's conversation is centered on one of the most important areas for Africa's future, AI in health, empowering solution for Africa's most pressing healthcare issues. Before we kick off, please make sure you stay on mute during the group discussion. You'll be able to ask your question after 9:45. If you have questions during the session, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll get to as many as possible. We'd also like to give a big thank you to our sponsors and partners who helped make today's possible. AWS, the South African AI Association for awareness, Epicus AI, and Inteleki for being our strategic partner, Hacker Society for awareness with students, and of course, everyone behind the scenes working to drive awareness and innovation. Ready, player one? Before we begin, I would like to share a short video from the UN Global Compact.
The automobile is a fad, a novelty. Horses are here to stay.
I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers.
Women cannot do men's work.
Sustainability is important, but we have more urgent issues.
History has taught us that the leaders who succeed are the ones who meet the needs of the future by moving forward.
To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we need forward thinkers. Those who see the SDGs as a driver of growth, not reputation. Who are busy making progress, not just pledges. Who know sustainability is the future, not a trend.
Because right now, only 15% of the SDGs are on track for 2030. Some are even moving backwards. And the majority of businesses aren't setting bold enough targets.
Forward Faster is here to guide companies on the areas where they can make the biggest, fastest impact for 2030.
Because sustainable companies give us the best chance of achieving the SDGs. But we need you to take more ambitious action.
The people and planet of tomorrow are relying on the forward thinkers and doers of today. Don't fall behind the times. Move forward faster.
You think they're gonna do it?
Okay. Throughout history, people have faced challenges, but every generation holds the responsibility to move forward. This video reminds us that when it comes to sustainability, healthcare, technology, meeting our goals means adapting, innovating, and thinking beyond fear. Building solutions for the future we all share. Now, here's something to think about. For many of us, especially those slightly older, the first time we interacted with a computer wasn't in a lab or an office, it was in an arcade. You'll drop in a coin and suddenly be battling digital ghost of racing cars. That was our first step into human-machine interaction. Fast forward to today, and we are no longer just playing with tech. We're building it to save lives. AI isn't the future. It's already here. The question is, how do we shape it to work for us? Let's begin our group discussion. I'll introduce each panelist. Dr. Gargi Mishra is a strategy and innovation leader with 22 years of global experience across mining, energy, technology, and sustainability. She specializes in strategic foresight, digital transformation, and ethical AI, helping organizations turn bold ideas into strategic value. She is a global keynote speaker and advocate for responsible AI adoption and inclusive leadership. Unfortunately, Kavya couldn't join us. Our one hero had to drop. Unfortunately, he had technical issues, but we can go to the next. So Julien Simon is a global AI technologist and educator as VP and Chief Evangelist at Arcee AI and formerly at Hugging Face in AWS. He's a leading voice in small language models, edge AI, and practical AI engineering. His YouTube channel reaches 350,000 AI enthusiasts globally. And our final panelist, Sourav Agarwal, is the founder of DataHat and has mentored over 500 people in AI. His work empowers future AI leaders and focuses on building agentic AI systems that don't just automate tasks, but plan, reason, and support complex workflow across industries, including healthcare. Hope you guys are doing well. So yeah, I think I'll start with Dr. Gargi Mishra. So yes, what do you think on the trend of AI currently? What's your opinion currently on AI?
So as you said, it's an optimistic space to play. But then when I start looking at the trend and when you start asking around and you see what's happening in the media and then we see the news, what we see as a future is very futuristic vision where we have digital twin and personalized care. But then if you start looking back a little bit and we see what actually going to transform the healthcare industry or the whole space, how we interact with doctors and physicians. And that's where the transformative power of AI is going to be more impactful. And that's where the most of the research in terms of consumer-centric way is putting through. So there is one era which is biomedical research and biotech, where a lot of labs are investing heavily. And then you see the consumer-facing space, which is growing very rapidly in last 2 years. And that's where even Google is coming in now. And they have this Google Med Gemini, which is still very internal, but they're trying to open up with doctors. And then Emmy, which is going to actually transform the how we interact. Because as we see in urban space, especially, we are tracking our data continuously, how much we walk, what we buy, what we eat. And that is going to create a vision and future where you have AI assisted first pass physician. AI not going to replace doctor so soon, but it's going to be assist them. And that's what we're seeing in now already happening. A very growing space, which is happening from last 2-3 years and or more than that, is the diagnostic space, which is AI is helping radiologists, lab technicians, how to faster diagnostic. And especially in that way, it's bridging that gap because not every city and every country have that many expert radiologists or that many resources to do that. So it's bridging that gap very nicely. There are some tools like PET AI already deployed in most of the environment. And we're seeing that another area which is growing is patient care and patient management, especially in chronic disease. And that's where the personalized aspect of AI come in, where you have one-on-one plan. And then other than painting the big picture where we hear the news of new protein discovery, there is another space which is just personalizing your journey how to heal, and that's coming for the cancer space and TB space, especially for African remote spaces. And then there is one example is health tracker, which is actually helping patient to understand and go into the clinical trial. And that's very interesting space because when I was reading about it, it's kind of exciting because it's happening now where it's using still human and help them to go through those clinical trial. But the future is going where we see the vision of the digital twin of us. So that means in future, it can actually have a clinical trial on specialized body part. You don't need a real human. And that's like very forward, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. But that's the very growing space and very exciting space for somebody like me who love to see what's coming in future. But the most exciting part is what's happening now, and that's the and that's why I like, because when you asked me to come and do with trend for the health, it was new space for me. Even though I track societal trends and AI trend, But then I realized that looking at health industry, it's very regulated. It's very, very backward in that way, even though technology is there. So it's very nice to see how it's going to break that space. And in that way, it can learn a lot from manufacturing and mining space even, because the real constraint, if you look at in healthcare, apart from disease and human, is how you optimize resource, how you optimize your supply chain, how you make the user experience when they go to a clinic. And that's where it coming in. So for example, in Dubai, they have a triage system. But then when I was looking at it, the triage system by AI is already implemented in Rwanda since 2016. So those business cases are there, and now it needs to bring back to broader space. And that's what I think is more exciting in next year or two, or maybe 5 years, will be customized, personalized patient care. And AI tools turning as a second eye, not really going to replace, but having a assisted second eye. Or sometimes the biggest time spent in a doctor's journey or nurse journey is admin work, and taking care of that, so that when I arrive, when I have a first pass. And that's where I like what Google is trying to do with Emmy, trying to develop a specialized AI which know how to ask the right diagnostic question. And that's where doctors often struggle, that when they say when patient come to them, it has multi version of what's happening to them, and it takes a lot of time to figure out what's actually the real cause. And then this AI is getting trained to ask the right question with right empathy, and quickly figuring out the first pass, and then they can move it to the expert level. So reducing that time, and then also making patient feel that they are heard, and then customize based on the other data. So it will take time, but it's already is reducing the burden on the healthcare, which is already constrained. And then some of the very niche and nice space I'm seeing is where some of the startups start developing that space. And I see that's the plan you have with the youth, developing some limbal tools. So for example, in Zimbabwe, there is using AI assisted X-ray to first pass chest X-ray for the TB. Or in Botswana, they're using it in a smartphone, an AI-assisted app, to screen children for the AI with the eye care, so that you can detect their eye health very early. And those things works in a remote space or the space where you don't have that many experts, because now AI coming as a first layer or first pass to at least detect early or preventable, health space. And that's where I think it's the way I see trend is going to grow more, creating a preventable health management and more patient care.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Thank you so much. It's a very comprehensive answer that you gave, but you gave us a good landscape about the trend of AI, especially in the health space. And Julien, so yes, I think it also comes back to your question as well. So the fact that data itself is important, because all of this will work if we have a curated data set where we can personalize experience. We need to have data for AI to reason and many more things. But one thing we've also seen, right, and because you work for Arcee AI, you've highlighted that SLMs, small language models under 70 billion parameters, are improving sharply, where models are improving at higher rate of 4 times per year improvement based on Anthropic, but Apple warns about illusion of reasoning. So what specific model design and training strategies, chain of thoughts, or fine-tuning techniques would you deploy to ensure that small language models remain accurate and dependable for healthcare tasks, such as personalizing experience for clients with various types of diseases, using electronic health records to reason from there, and making sure that the personalized experience is accurate and safe for all and transparent?
Yeah, that's a great question, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Glad I made it. Healthcare, probably more than anything else, is all about trust. When we interact with chatbots or Gen AI in general, it's we're hoping that the model is not hallucinating. We're hoping that the model is knowledgeable, etc. But if we're chatting about cooking recipes or poetry, I guess a bit of creativity, maybe hallucination. It could be funny, right? Could be useful even. Uh, about when it's about healthcare, it's scary and potentially extremely dangerous. So I know everybody obsesses about models all the time. It's been that case for the last 10 years, but the data is everything. Um, it's really, it's really the core of AI, and career advice for anybody here: be a great data engineer, not a great AI engineer. Um, we have enough, I guess. So coming back to my point, so how do you make the question is how do you build a model that you can trust? So it starts from quality data. I can never repeat that enough. And quality means highly curated, highly diversified, many examples of the same thing, especially for text, because none of us will ask the same question in the same way. None of us will describe symptoms in the same way. A 10-year-old kid will describe a headache in a different way than a 40-year-old, etc., etc. So you really need to spend as much time as possible curating data, cleaning data, diversifying data, and then really asking yourself, what's the question I want to answer? What am I trying to build? Because sometimes we see people just piling up data up to the sky, to the moon, but is it really useful data? Is it really something that helps? There is such a thing as too much data. So if you're trying to build, let's say, an oncology application, do you really need, cardiology data? Do you really need, I don't know, malaria data? I don't know, so
Yeah.
there's really before you even start collecting and piling data, you need to figure out, okay, what am I trying to solve? And it could be, it could be tempting to say, oh, we're going to build a model and a data set and a model that solves everything, but that's actually the wrong way to look at it. Doctors are specialists, right? I mean, you have general
Yeah.
practice doctors and then you have specialists, and there's good reason for that, right? Specialists tend to study a little more, and a great cardiologist will be horrible at dermatology maybe, and that's the way it should be, right? So I think we need to also look at that and try to understand, maybe yes, we have a level 1 model that is capable of, in a way of routing the question to a more specialist model. And actually at RC we've been working on model routing, not specifically for healthcare, but that's an interesting technique. So you really need to understand that, what am I trying to solve? Do I need a mile wide and an inch deep, or do I need the opposite? And then, what's the data that is going to help me build that? How clean is it? How diversified is it? Where can I find it? And the good thing is, the human body is the human body, right? So for better or worse, all of us can be afflicted with same diseases and problems. So I know that sometimes it's a pipe dream, but sharing data is paramount, right?
Yeah.
There's no, the language is one thing, but if you have medical data, if you have medical images, etc., they work on a global scale.
Yeah.
And I know we have some data sets out there for medical data. We certainly don't have enough, but I think data sharing is super important. And the last thing I want to say is, of course, we need experts in the loop. We need doctors.
Yeah.
We need
True.
experts to help curate the data and to help evaluate the model, because you can build benchmarks all day long and test sets and everything, and that's fine. We need those. We need the automated way to look that to decide that, okay, version n plus 1 of the model is actually a little better than version n, so let's keep iterating. But until you have real domain experts, in this case doctors or researchers, etc., looking at the answers, giving you human preference feedback, giving you alignment feedback, giving you tone of voice feedback. You can't, especially if you have a customer facing or patient facing application, the tone of voice is super important. Doctors between themselves tend to be extremely blunt, but you cannot use the same tone with patients. Okay, so if it's a doctor to doctor app, then fine. Bluntness and going to the point is fine. You need to be crystal clear. If you're building a patient facing app, it's different. So all those elements, factual correctness, tone of voice, safety, alignment, etc., can only be implemented with human experts. And yes, you can also use AI, and yes, you can use reinforcement learning, and yes, you can use all those things, but it can't be a hands-off operation, especially for healthcare apps. It's too sensitive, it's too mission critical. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Interesting. No, fantastic. Because as you mentioned, again, you need experts in the loop. So the most important part will be the person who has that technical knowledge. And I think it even gives them an advantage, because the future for doctors would be for them to be augmented with AI again. So they can train their own model to be so specific to their knowledge base. They can share their knowledge base of what they've worked on, and they can commoditize from there. They can start a whole business that can serve many populations around the world, even in. So that's the fun part about it, that solution can be scaled very quickly with AI and machine learning, and making sure data are all linked accordingly. So yeah, that's so true. So Sourav, so you've mentored over hundreds of students stepping into AI. And today we're moving into an era where AI agents, task-specific automations, or something that you've been working on quite a bit, agentic AI, systems that can reason and plan and also act autonomously. That's also part of the idea that we can use AI to help us specialize and make sure that it gets the most informative information for the right task for each patient. So with that shift, both we build and how do we learn for youth in Africa starting an AI journey? What mindset, technical skills, or learning approaches do you believe are most critical to prepare them for the next wave? And where it's not just about building models, but building systems that can reason and interact is more important. But one thing I've also noticed is that data engineering is a career path that is actually increasing. And I understand why, because of how data is so critical and important in this field.
Thank you, Ngwako. That's a very interesting question. And first of all, it makes me really excited to see a lot of youth coming up right in the working day in the morning, showing their enthusiasm and interest in order to learn and then grow and develop new things. I always advise the people I interact with, the learners who are out there, to focus on 3 A's majorly, starting with accept, act, and then amplify. So starting all the way from where you accept that there is a need to change. And I would like to take a quote from Dr. Gargi as well, where she mentions that change is constant, right? But direction is a choice. So the way we look at things over the time, how the industry is evolving, it's important that we accept that we have to work around different ways, different technologies, and different nuances of solving problems. And now with agentic AI coming in the picture, and it's getting very fast paced, it becomes really important for us to get adapted to the change and accept that, yes, these are some of the new trends that are coming up. These are some of the new ways of solving problems, and then slowly start building and acting on it. So there are two major points that need to be highlighted clearly when a learner wants to focus with these new technologies in this emerging market, is to have a curiosity over control. Oftentimes, like when we face any challenge or uncertainty, we consider that as a bug. But no, let's look at it from a feature perspective. Okay, now I encountered something which is uncertain. What next can be done? How can I solve this problem? What more can I draw out of it? Because the technology in itself is very raw. We don't know how the technology can perform a few years down the line, or what could be some of the more nuanced ways of solving problems to few years down the line. But having a curious mindset will definitely help you take that leap forward and reach that point where you're just not looking at a technology perspective, but rather you're looking at the overall solution. And the second point that I would like to highlight to all the learners out here is have a systems level thinking. Like when we are working on any problem, the technology is must be seen as an enabler, a tool which helps us solve various challenges. But what is the broader level challenge that we are trying to highlight, right? Julian also addressed the problem that data forms the core of any solutioning, right? We are looking at technology, okay, let's build this solution. But what is the underlying nature of that solution that needs to be built out? What is the nature of data that we are looking at? And how it overall fits the scenario. There are various constraints, say geographical constraints are there are various policy related constraints, then there are also constraints in terms of acceptability of a particular solution in terms of how people interact with it. So having a systems level thinking and a curious mindset will certainly help learners take that leap forward and excel in whatever technology that they are delving with.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I totally agree with your comments. I mean, one thing for sure, I mean, it's important that when you start developing solutions, especially all us youth and the many who have so much experience. I mean, one thing I've actually understood is the architecture design before you even start implementing, just to have a better understanding of how everything works. That becomes your blueprint into developing your solution. So I think there are reasons why it's important to plan and critique how you're going to build this system, a reliable system. And there's so many new techniques. I think the one thing that with AI itself, it evolves so quickly in terms of there's something completely new that pops up. And I'll go back to Julien, if you don't mind. But the fact that when it comes to new techniques of training AI models, how do you guys keep up at Arcee AI?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's the second part of the riddle. So the first part of the riddle is great data, as we discussed. The second part is how do you apply it to the model. So I think for a long time there was a significant gap between reinforcement learning as I would say practice and implemented by OpenAI and Anthropic, et cetera, because the amount of effort and compute required to run RLHF and all those techniques was just crazy. And in the last 12 months or something like that, we've seen new reinforcement learning techniques that are much more compute efficient and more importantly that don't require as much human element, if any. So reinforcement learning with AI, so to speak. And so those techniques have really helped small language models catch up and in many cases exceed the performance of LLMs on certain domains. So that's the trick. And I agree with you, it's moving fast. So we go from PPO to DPO to GRPO to whatever comes next. And those are complicated, right? Those are complicated. The code is the code. The code is available. You can go and run it. It's implemented in Hugging Face libraries, etc. So it's not a big deal running it, but it's a big deal running it right and running it on quality data. And again, that data for reinforcement learning.
Sorry, Julien, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up if it's fine. Just wanted to give the panel list just sure. 2 more questions and we're done.
No, sure. So it's really about, again, understanding again, what are you trying to do? Are you aligning for safety? Are you aligning for tone of voice, etc.? And what data are you bringing to the mix? And I want to say last thing, synthetic data is also very helpful. Because writing quality human preference data is very time intensive. I mean, you can't ask doctors to spend 4 hours a day giving feedback. So you need some human preference data to bootstrap the process. and then you can diversify it, multiply it through synthetic processes to keep aligning and keep improving the model. But yeah, it's a fast-moving area. You need to keep reading papers, and you need to keep experimenting.
100%. That's so true. And Dr. Gargi Mishra, so you've highlighted that AI impacts depends on how we design, deploy, and governance, especially to avoid deepening inequalities such as gender, race, ethnic groups. In the context of AI for healthcare in Africa, what are the top three concrete governance or design principle you believe should be embedded from day one to ensure you've led AI initiative drive equitable output and rather than unintentional reinforcement of existing systematic gaps? So a good example was there was a research on the liver diagnostic system, which had more false negative on women more than men, just because the data set was not equally balanced based on gender. So that's why there was that particular bias. So what is your insights around that?
It's a very critical question, and I'm happy that you raised that. But even before I get there and start dealing on that question, I would like to, bring two things. One is, which is very important now, especially with all the we all excited. We want to build something in AI in health space. So kind of little bit of, as I stretches, my job is to bring the caution in the room. And also little bit iterate what Julien says and highlight why it's important. So even before we building, few things to start thinking before. So for example, if you're building in a health space, any technology, any tool, first, very important to understand it's a very highly regulated field, and it's very sensitive because it's all about us. It's life at stake. So you're not going to rely, like he says, on ChatGPT to diagnose me. So you have to be very sensitive about what you're building, and then understanding, especially for the youth team in the room, very important to understand and market research. And there is a very nice example of a startup from Nigeria, 54 Gene, one of the poster boy startup in 2 years back. Very good in intention, what they did, but why they failed. And just have a look at their case study and understanding it was not able to understand the market research, not able to understand the regulations coming in that way. So it's not just having a funding and an idea, understanding that landscape and regulation. So for example, if you're building something in South Africa, it's very important to know who going to approve. So I know in SAFRA, which is South African Diagnostic Authority, Product Authority, Regulatory Authority, they regulate and they allow any tool to go and get used. So before you even build, once you build, it has to be approved. So get to know those things. And then keep the doctors and experts and labs in the loop. And that bring to the something very important which Julien says. Yes, AI has a better connecting dot capability. So yes, if you have a 50 doctors to diagnose, they might have a different variation of diagnosis based on their experience. And AI can bridge that gap. So it's good to use that. But and there is very nice study, and the same study you and me share in our earlier chat. Based on the diabetes patient eye scan, AI was able to pick up other health issue. It's good to have, but will you allow it? And that bring the expert AI part, which Julien mentioned. Yes, it can scan the whole body, it can connect the dots, and it might able to give you a holistic report on your health. But do you really need to know? Sometimes there are people who can live with some underlying conditions and they don't need medical intervention. And that's why it's needed to have an expert in the loop and very curated data for your body, not to journalize it and bring that demographic. So that's, I just wanted to iterate it just to bring the caution in the room. And then coming back to your question, which is the top three. So there are very good best practice, and we talked about it in our previous chat as well. But if I put a healthcare lens, very important to have inclusive data design. So it means when you start building, number one, to know what you're trying to solve. And that's why I said, look at the landscape, not only go for the diagnostic. There is a very big space in optimizing the process, bringing the efficiency in the system. But if you with in mind to build a model in diagnostic space, be clear that what data you're bringing is where it should be inclusive of race, gender, demographic, age, And then going beyond the urban hospitals, it means going to the remote areas, collaborating with those. And then the second part is who you're building for, what problem you're solving and for who. It means bringing that empathy, and it means you have to build from the early stage. Don't build in a isolation in a garage. We're not building a Uber delivery app. So go in and engage with the people, your healthcare provider, nurse, even the patient. And best practice is to form that community or a group where you have advisor to guide you on each journey. And then most important, and which is applied to any AI model or any AI algorithm, and Julien is expert here, is build which is explainable, explainability and bias mitigation. So that tomorrow, if your AI diagnose, and I'm giving only a diagnostic example because I know optimization and process is a different game, and you don't need to be that sensitive in that space in terms of, there will be low barrier to entry for regulation. But if your diagnostic AI tool has a conflict with the doctor or primary caregiver, it able to explain your algorithm is not a ambiguous or secret code that we don't know how it arrived to that conclusion. And it's very important because trust is important. I'm not going to trust a chat, like people do Google their health issue from ages and now they're doing chat GPT, but you're not going to put that as a tool. So it has to know how it arrived to that conclusion. So those three things, remember to have inclusive data, co-create with community. When I say community, nurse, doctor, patient, and the labs and other ecosystem, and build a explainable AI so that you can explain what the algorithm logic was used. And then just choose the problem wisely. There is so much to do, not just in diagnostic space.
Yeah, true. Thank you so much. I mean, that's very insightful. And I'll have one last question for you, Sourav. Then we'll open. I see the questions popping up, but I'd like you also to have an opportunity to also have your last thoughts. But before we, so yeah, I'll tell you. So we live in a world where, top tier education often just, you just one click away. So whether it's like MIT Open courseware, Stanford AI courses, Hugging Face Learn, Deep Learning, etc. But many still struggle to navigate the abundance of resources and structure an effective learning path. In your view, how should youth approach their AI learning journey to move beyond tutorials, develop real world problem solving, which Dr. Gargi has mentioned quite a bit, and Julien and you guys all together, to develop, obviously, ultimately to contribute mainly to the field of healthcare in AI.
Absolutely. Again, a very interesting point that you raised, Ngwako. So for learners who are out here, like one of the key aspects that you need to consider is why. They need to understand their why for any particular learning journey that they are trying to understand. What are the problems are they primarily interested in solving? What excites them most? Now, coming back to the point of how this different courses that are available and online resources that are out there are multitude of those. It's not important as to what different technologies you keep on adding to your list, but it's more important that how do you engineer with those solutions? How do you utilize those technologies in order to solve the problems? And to just, in the interest of time, I'll break it down into three primary levels that any learner who wants to start into can undertake for any agentic AI learning, or whether starting with data science, machine learning, data engineering, other aspects. Primarily start at the foundation level. What are the core concepts that you need to imbibe in order to understand this technology? Say you're starting with the transformer models, you're getting started with how the different uh, popular models are working out there. Then you learn about prompt engineering, you learn about some data science, data processing techniques, data wrangling techniques, and then slowly start building small. Take up a small problem and build on it using the concepts that you just acquired. Once you start gaining confidence in that development process and start getting excited by seeing what is out there, you will feel more confidence in going out and then exploring a multitude of different technologies that are out there. Then once with this confidence, you next go and try to solve a real world problem. Okay, let's look at what are the real world problems out there and how does it fit in the picture that I am trying to study or in the picture that I'm trying to learn upon. It's about going all the way, then again taking a step back and looking at, okay, what are the different use cases that other experts have already solved in this space, and what was their creative thought process in solving this problem. You alone, you can only learn so much, but if you try to cater from the experts who are already out there, look at their work, read their researches, or try to cater to their blogs even, then you would have a lot more understanding and develop or create your perception around how to build solutions and what are the how the different technologies come together in order to solve their problems.
We are muted, Mr. Ngwako.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was busy saying thank you so much, Sourav. It was highly insightful. So what I'm going to do now, we can go to the Q&A. We have 2 questions, and we have one from Andre Arance. Who is ultimately responsible for decision made or supported by AI? Clinical, so developers or institutions? Sorry. I will give this to Dr. Gargi. This is your question.
And it's a very interesting question because pretty much what Julien says, it's all about the trust and who you will trust, your doctor or AI. And yes, AI is accelerated in fast forward few, and it's very interesting in another way. Yes, AI is not accelerated in fast 3 years. It's been ongoing. That research is there. It's just democratized in last 3 years. It means we all have power to think about how to apply AI, but doesn't mean it makes AI or us as an expert. And especially in human health space, it's always going to be the doctor over AI. I shouldn't say that because as a futurist, I shouldn't say it will be always stay safe. Your first video was, I don't want to be quoted in history that it will never be a AI, but looking at current landscape, current expertise, and very important, it is data side of it. We don't have that diversified data enough to give it a machine and to come to a conclusion. If you look at the whole data just for the genetics data, it only 13% of the African data is there. So we're not there data wise to let machine decide. And that's why till we have that inclusive data set globally, it will always be a doctor, a voice over a machine. Definitely. And a machine, AI is here to just help and support and bring that equality, and that will come through data. But as of now, this will be doctor over
Definitely.
AI.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So the next question we have from Tepo Marende. How do we avoid garbage in, garbage out situation in developing countries or the continent like Africa, where health data may be incomplete and maybe not very great quality? I know Julien mentioned synthetic data, but how much would that subsidize for poor or non-existent real patient data? That's a very good question for Julien. That's your question.
Yes, thank you for the question. I love the garbage in, garbage out thing. I actually use that expression a lot, and it was true in the 60s for the very first structured programming efforts, and it's funny to see that it's still true for AI, and I believe it will be true long after I'm gone. So that's why I keep saying data, data, data. So I think it's a 2-part question. I think you need to, as I mentioned earlier, the human body is the human body. Okay, so if you want to build a pneumonia application or a dental application or whatever you're after, you should absolutely try to use existing data that's out there. You need to look way beyond the boundaries of Africa. And, I know how huge Africa is, but there's a world outside of Africa, and there's data outside of Africa, and you should absolutely use that. That will get you started, at least for experimentation. Then, of course, again, and we had this discussion before, Ngwako, on the podcast. I think it's all about collaboration, right? It's the same story as language support. Okay, I know Africa has a great number of amazing languages that are all over the continent, probably unfortunately not well supported by the main LLMs out there. So if you want to build language support, you need to collaborate. I think it's the same here. I think it's an opportunity for African countries, African universities,
True.
African research labs, and beyond to collaborate. Now, I think the main difficulty is, so if you're looking at, let's say, patient data, human body data, that'll work. Then if you're looking at, let's say, electronic health records, if you're looking at administrative data, the more IT side of things, the fact that maybe data is not even digital yet, right? Maybe some of it is still on
True.
paper, et cetera, et cetera. And I know some areas don't have access to a lot of doctors, et cetera. So yes, that's a challenge. There's no silver bullet for it. But I would, again, I think collaboration, data sharing is the only way. No country, no community can afford to start building from scratch in their own little bubble. I think it's it's not going to be successful. I think it's if there's one area where we can share stuff, it's healthcare and the human body. So we should have this obsession to share and collaborate.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, true. And as you say, it's so true. Like the fact that there's so much opportunity now for Africa itself, because firstly, we have to digitalize our data set. Once we digitalize that, we can train models. What does that mean? That we're opening to a new economy. So I think the things that we have, like as scarcity or what we don't have, I think today's lesson is that as youth, there's so many areas where we should focus on and be strategic on focusing on those areas to solve the problems that we want to solve in society. It could be something very specific or it can be something very broad. But overall, I truly understand the fact that it's important that, data itself starts from the beginning, starts from the patient, starts from the doctor, starts from the data that we already have already. So yeah, that was a really good question. So we have another question from Peter. As we apply reinforcement learning and data-driven models to build viable AI systems, especially in sensitive fields like healthcare, how do we ensure that the algorithm don't just mimic patterns in data, but actually capture the depth of human intuition, empathy, and judgment? And is it even possible to achieve this without compromising ethical or clinical integrity? That's a good question. Sourav, would you want to answer this question?
Certainly, that's a really interesting question. And when you talk about any technology, not just say reinforcement learning, when we talk about any model, primarily the models operate in a black box fashion. We don't know how the model is underlying, how the decision is being made by the model. And it very resonates with the question here that how do we ensure that the model is giving the right circumstantial output and not just making a guess out of here. So there are few technological guardrails, along with there are various ways in which you can try to understand and reason out what are the different ways the technology is understanding the responses or generating the responses. Just to call out, say Lime is one such technology which is quite popular, which helps you understand how the model is at the core making that particular decision in the local context. Then there are various few other techniques as well, but this is a very open-ended challenge that is posed across the AI industry as to how do we ensure that the AI is having that human intelligence incorporated and not just making a guess based on the data pattern. That's a very interesting point there.
Sorry, I was on mute again. Thank you so much. Yeah. So there's one more question. This is the last question. What are the steps being taken to make sure AI is robust and safe from external and malicious influence and threats by T. Kufa? I don't know who would like to take this question, but I don't mind. I don't know who would like to answer this question. I think that's the question I'm asking.
All right,
Julien.
I'll take it quickly, I guess, and if anybody wants to pitch in. So robust and safe are different things. That could be a whole different webinar. But let's focus maybe on, I think we talk about trustworthiness and robustness a little bit already. So maybe let's focus on safety from external and malicious influences. So again, it's I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but you need to spend a lot of time looking at the data, curating the data, understanding the biggest mistakes you can make when building a model is just again piling up data, because we've been told for 10 years that there is no such thing as too much data for deep learning models, right? We've all seen those graphs saying machine learning models break if you add too much data, deep learning models keep improving if you keep adding data. So it's technically true, but it's diminishing returns, and there is such a thing as diluting your good data with bad data. Think Reddit forums or Twitter feeds, etc. It's very easy to have petabytes of data. um, are they adding anything in terms of knowledge? Are they adding anything in terms of quality? Probably not. So you need to understand your data sources, and trust that whoever built a data set was really trying to build a great data set and not anything else. So I would say research data sets, if you look at medical data sets coming from trustworthy institutions and with research papers, etc., they're good, right? I mean, trust and verify, but they're good. Public internet data, and I'm not so worried about malicious influences than just just go to your medical forums anywhere in the world. They're full of how do I put this without being rude? They're full of incorrect information, right? That's not a good source. That's not something you want in your model. So stick to stuff coming from healthcare professionals, researchers, people who are actually trying to build something great and not just be noisy about it. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. We just hit 10 o'clock. But yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, this was highly insightful. And I forgot to mention one more important thing, or not important, but one of our actual partners, Interleki, it was Peter who answered the question. Asked the question earlier on. He was also part of assisting with the event. So I forgot to include the logo. I do apologize, Peter, if you're listening. But thank you very much, everyone, again, for attending this session. It was highly insightful. I think it gives us a good understanding of where we should start and why we're doing what we need to do. So even though Youth Day itself, the history of Youth Day from 1976 was a day of massacre, but now it's a day where we have to think of it as a way that this day should be a day where we come together, as this group discussion is done, and we plan on how do we solve our problems going forward. So it's not just a conversation that we're having, but it's more about the conversation we have today is to solve the problems tomorrow. And it's our responsibilities as youth. We can rely on governments, you can rely on anyone else, but trust me, it's not going to happen if you don't do the change. You need to be the one responsible on making this a better place for all. So again, thank you again for everyone for joining. And I hope you guys have a fantastic Youth Day. And I know from the ones from France, Julien, you're flying. I'm sure you were in America.
Yeah,
not so
flying
long
soon.
ago. Definitely have a safe travel. And Sourav, thank you again. We will discuss. We are working on projects together, so that's exciting. And Dr. Gargi Mishra, I really appreciate again for your time. It was amazing to get all your insights today. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much. Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Thanks.